Chapter 1241. Yu Lily turned her head and looked at him. Especially when she saw his slightly evil features, she couldn't help but raise the corner of her mouth. She said with some disgust, "What's so good about you? They are better looking." "Really?" Oh Ming narrowed his eyes. In his deep peach blossom eyes, evil began to overflow unscrupulously. "Maybe others say the same. Come on, let's do it for others to see." As he said that, his hand touched Yu Lily's head, as if he was going to kiss her. Yu Lily's lips curled into a smile. She took a step back and said, "Go away. Are you trying to be a hooligan in broad daylight?" Oh Ming didn't realize that he was being despised. He raised his eyebrows and took a step forward. "That's not the way to be a hooligan. Come on, let me teach you." "Go away." Yu Lily smiled and stepped back, but Oh Ming was obviously a little faster. He took a step forward, grabbed her with one hand, and bent over to hold her in his arms. Yu Lily turned her head and saw Oh Ming looking at her gently. A pair of peach blossom eyes were like a gurgling spring, sparkling, and soft like a sea of flowers. When Yu Lily saw such a pair of eyes, she suddenly felt very lucky. Fortunately, he can see. Such a pair of beautiful eyes, such a pair of eyes that make people's hearts beat. If it was really like a few days ago, it would be such a pity. When he looked at her with such a pair of eyes, Yu Lily could not help but feel the love coming from him all the time. In fact, sometimes, he was just a little bit of a mouth. Yu Lily turned her head and leaned forward, standing on her tiptoes to get close to his lips. Oh Ming thought she was going to kiss him, so he leaned forward. Unexpectedly, Yu Lily had moved closer, but the moment she opened her mouth, she bit down hard on his lip. Oh Ming frowned. Just as he was about to recover, Yu Lily bit him again. "Why did you bite me?" Oh Ming felt inexplicable. He raised his eyebrows slightly and lowered his head with a low laugh. "Is it because of Xian Xing's flirting method?" "No." Yu Lily shook her head and looked at him with a smile. "It's just because you have a dirty mouth." Oh Ming was speechless. Before he could say anything, Yu Lily held his face in her hands and kissed him on the lips. The gloominess of being mocked and scolded disappeared without a trace. Yu Lily kissed him again and licked his lips gently with her tongue. He raised his hand to touch her head. He moved his lips forward and acted as if he wanted more. However, more and more people were looking at them. Yu Lily immediately pushed him away and whispered, "You're acting like a hooligan." When Oh Ming heard that, he was slightly stunned. But soon, he laughed softly. Flirting and not being satisfied, wasn't this the same as acting like a rogue? Seeing Yu Lily running away with a smile, Oh Ming immediately chased after her. "Stop right there." Yu Lily ran even faster. She turned around and waved at Oh Ming. "Come on, let's go eat." Oh Ming was a little puzzled, but when he saw her bright and beautiful smile, his mood naturally soared. His eyes turned into crescents as he chased after Yu Lily. "Wait for me." "Aya, why are you so slow when you're so tall?" Oh Ming was puzzled. Yu Lily couldn't do anything else, but she could run faster than anyone else. "Your legs are so long. Why are you so slow?" Chapter 1242. Oh Ming's voice wasn't soft. There were many people walking around them. When they heard Oh Ming's words, those who knew what was going on looked at them suspiciously. Yu Lily's face heated up. She quickly covered it and found a corner to hide. "I'm going to die." How shameless of him to say something like that in front of so many people. Fortunately, the gazes around them only lingered for a moment before quickly turning away. Oh Ming walked up to her and held her hand proudly as he asked, "Didn't you say we were going out for dinner? What are we going to eat? What can you eat? Your hand is already like this. You should eat something high in protein." "Seafood?" "Okay." She looked at the time. It was only evening. Near the park, there was no lack of restaurants. It was also close to the seafood market, so there were many places to eat seafood. The two of them walked slowly, shoulder to shoulder. After walking for about 10 minutes, they arrived at a seafood restaurant. They booked a private room. Just as they were about to order, Yu Lily received a call from Wen Fenglin. Uncle Wen. Yu Lily held out her cell phone for him to see. She answered the call and called out, Uncle Wen. Hey, Lily, where did you and Ming go? We're preparing to eat. Have you eaten? Oh, I see. I was going to call you out to eat together. Where are you now? Yu Lily quickly gave him the name of the restaurant. Unexpectedly, Wen Fenglin seemed surprised and said, What a coincidence. We're here too. Why don't you come over and join us? Which room are you in? When Yu Lily heard that, she knew something was amiss. She turned her head to look at Ming and said, Uncle Wen is here too. He asked us to join him for dinner. Ming furrowed his brows and shook his head gently at him. If Wen Fenglin had been alone, he wouldn't have had any objections. But it was obvious that Uncle Wen wasn't alone. With such a large group of people together, it was inevitable that they would have to drink and socialize. He wasn't there to do such a thing. When Yu Lily saw that, she knew what was going on. She said into the phone, Forget it, Uncle Wen. Ming hasn't fully recovered yet. We shouldn't go and spoil your fun. It doesn't matter. There are only 3 of us, and there are only 5 of you. We'll go back after eating. We won't drink or socialize. Don't be afraid. Wen Fenglin's voice was filled with ridicule as he asked, Which room are you in? Shall I bring you over? It just so happens that you're also a painter, so it's not a bad thing for us to meet. In all fairness, Uncle Wen treated him very well. Since he had already put it that way, Yu Lily would feel bad if she tried to turn him down again. In the end, he relented and reported the room number. He reached out and pinched Yu Lily's face and said, I'm tired of pretending. Do you know that? Yu Lily was a little embarrassed and smiled apologetically. I forgot, Ming had an urge to strangle her. Soon, Wen Fenglin arrived at the scene. When he saw the 2 young people, his mood lifted significantly. He said, What a coincidence. Let's go. They're all waiting for you. There weren't many people, but it wasn't easy to accept. When Ming saw Zhenli, his face darkened. Chapter 1243. The moment she entered, Yu Lily saw Zhenli. Beside Zhenli sat a middle-aged man who looked to be about the same age as Wen Fenglin. Yu Lily wasn't sure if it was an illusion, but the moment she entered, she felt the middle-aged man's gaze land on her. His gaze seemed to be probing, doubtful, and nostalgic. The complicated emotions made Yu Lily look over as well. She was a little confused. Before Yu Lily could confirm anything, the middle-aged man's gaze quickly shifted away. Come, let me introduce you. Wen Fenglin let Ming and Yu Lily take their seats before he started speaking with a smile. This is Xiao Jiao's son. Zhenli has probably met him before. His name is Ming. This is Ming's girlfriend, Yu Lily. Zhenli smiled and extended his hand toward Yu Lily. Hello, Miss Yu. I'm Zhenli. Just as Yu Lily was about to extend her hand to shake Zhenli's, she could clearly feel a cold aura emanating from beside her. But, her hand was already extended halfway. If she retracted it, wouldn't that be too deliberate? How could Uncle Wen keep his face after this? Yu Lily had no choice but to bite the bullet and extend her hand. After shaking Zhenli's hand gently, she immediately retracted it. She reached out and gently squeezed Ming's hand. The smile on her face faded. As for Ming, he had already switched to playing blind. Since he couldn't see anything, there was no need for him to care. How could Wen Fenglin not see through Ming's intentions? He didn't care and introduced the other person besides Zhenli to Yu Lily. This is the chairman of the province's art association, Zhen Xianlang. He used to be a good friend of mine. We haven't seen each other for many years. We only met this year, when Fenglin introduced. Zhen Xianlang and Zhenli looked alike. One look and anyone could tell that they were father and son. However, Jin Xianlang's facial features were more amiable than Wen Fenglin's. He looked more capable. His eyes were big, bright and full of expression, and he looked sharp and capable. Hello. Jin Xianlang extended his hand toward Yu Lily and said, Miss Yu is really beautiful. Xiao O is really lucky to have found such a beautiful girlfriend. It was obviously a polite greeting to change the topic to O Ming. Everyone present knew that O Ming's expression softened when he heard that. So be it. It was better than pestering his woman and refusing to let go. O Ming curled his lips and nodded. My luck is not bad. She doesn't despise me even though I'm like this. This must be true love. It was obvious teasing, but in reality, it was a show of force. Zhenli was a smart person. He replied with a smile, isn't that so? This is true love. Jin Xianlang couldn't help but laugh. He quickly changed the topic and exchanged a few words with O Ming. O Lily and O Xianlang and Shen. From time to time, Jin Xianlang and Zhenli would talk to O Ming. Yu Lily sat to the side and occasionally helped O Ming peel the shells of prawns and pick up fish fillets. She didn't interrupt their conversation. Ming, they were talking, but they, Li, and said, the topic. As, and when Zhen and was. Wen and Yu Li, and. As Zhen Lilzhen and Ming Zhen Ming said Li. Chapter 1244. What she wanted to say was suddenly interrupted. Yu Lily stretched out her elbow and nudged O Ming. When Zhenli and Jin Xianlang heard that, they looked at each other. Jin Xianlang looked at Wen Fenglin and said with a smile, I see. To be honest, I find Miss Yu a little familiar. What do you think, Lao Wen? Wen Fenglin was in the middle of eating when he heard that. His heart skipped a beat. He thinks so too. How could that be? This is the first time they've met. He maintained his composure on the surface and turned to look at Yu Lily. He pretended to scrutinize her for a moment and nodded his head. She does look a little familiar. Does she look like Xian Er? Xian Er, Yu Lily was no stranger to that name. Old Mrs. Shen had also mentioned that she looked like Xian Er. But, it wasn't the physical resemblance. It was the charm. Yu Lily lowered her head awkwardly when she heard Jin Xianlang's words. She smiled and asked, so, you know Xian Er as well? Jin Xianlang was surprised and asked, you know her? Yeah. I've heard Uncle Wen mention her before. I've also heard a grandmother mention her. She also said that I look a little like Xian Er. I guess so. But, who's the grandmother you're talking about? Xian Er's aunt. Old Shen's half-fairy, Wen Fenglin replied. When Jin Xianlang heard that, he knew who it was. He smiled and lowered his head in shame. Xian Er is my wife. Wife? Yu Lily was stunned. She looked at Wen Fenglin. Isn't Xian Er Wen Fenglin's lover? According to old Mrs. Shen, Xian Er's health isn't very good. Shouldn't she be unable to get married? How could she have such an old child? Zhenli looks to be at least 21 or 22 years old. Wen Fenglin looked over at the same time and smiled. His two deep dimples were embedded in his cheeks. They were deep and beautiful. He looked at her with a deep gaze. It was as if he was looking at her, but it was also as if he was looking at someone else. Xian has passed away. Yu Lily knew that and nodded her head. But, she didn't know what to say. After thinking for a while, he asked, I heard from Grandmother Shen that Aunt Xian Er doesn't seem to be in good health. Yes. Her health wasn't very good, Jin Xianlang replied. He looked at Yu Lily with a hint of loneliness and said, when she passed away, I was studying in the north. I didn't even get to see her one last time. When Wen Fenglin heard that, he seemed to have thought of something and laughed mirthlessly. You were in the north at that time. Why didn't you bring her over? When Jin Xianlang heard that, he looked Wen Fenglin in the eye and sighed. You're still blaming me, Wen Fenglin choked on his words. He looked away and coldly said, I have no right to blame you. I can only blame myself. There was a story. The relationship between these two elders was not shallow. Yu Lily's mind instantly conjured up a drama. When Fenglin was a poor boy who fell in love with Xian, the daughter of a wealthy family. Because he was too poor, the girl's family objected. Later, Xian was forced to marry Zhenli's father, who was rich and powerful. Wasn't it said that Xian's health wasn't good enough to bear a child? In other words, Zhenli's father ignored Xian's health and forced her to bear a child for him. That was why Xian died? Chapter 1245. Therefore, when Uncle Wen introduced Zhenli's father to her just now, he said, "My good friend," instead of "my good friend." This was the difference, right? Yu Lily seemed to have figured out the cause and effect of all this, and she also understood their current feelings. Because of a woman, good friends would not turn against each other, but they would gradually drift apart. There was a dead man between the two brothers. However, Zhenli's father still had a child left behind by that woman. As for Uncle Wen, he had nothing. For so many years, he had been alone. Even as a bystander, Yu Lily felt some sympathy for him. She was so engrossed in her thoughts that she didn't even hear when Uncle Wen called out to her. Ming pulled her gently and asked, "Are you full?" Yu Lily calmed down and nodded. "Yes, I'm full. Let's go." "All right." Yu Lily stood up and realized that the atmosphere was strangely awkward. What happened? Yu Lily was very curious, but she had to be distracted at this time. Seeing that Uncle Wen and Ming had both stood up, she lowered her head, took Ming's hand, and walked forward. However, he could not help but turn to look at Jin Xianlang curiously. This elder seemed to be looking at her differently. Could it be that he really treated her like Xian? Feeling a little awkward, Yu Lily quickly followed Ming out. When they were outside, when Fenglin looked at Yu Lily and said with a smile, "That guy is just like that. You do look a little like Xian, If I didn't know that Xian had never given birth to a child, would have thought that you were her daughter." Xian didn't give birth? Not having children and not being able to have children were two different concepts. Yu Lily looked at Wen Fenglin strangely and asked, "How could that be? Wasn't that Zhenli just now Xian's child?" Wen Fenglin shook his head. "No. The child is only in his early 20s. As for Xian, she passed away 24 or 25 years ago." 24 or 25 years ago? Isn't that about the same age as Yu Lily? Yu Lily's heart suddenly beat faster, and she subconsciously looked at Ming. Ming's expression seemed to change a little, but it didn't change much at the moment. Yu Lily thought for a moment and asked, "Uncle Wen, do you have a photo of Auntie Xian, Everyone was saying that they looked alike, but Yu Lily had never even seen a photo of them. When Fenglin heard that, he immediately understood. "Why? Are you finally curious?" Yu Lily nodded her head. "Yeah. I heard from Granny Shen that we don't really look alike. At least, you can't tell at first glance, but, yes, the more we get to know each other, the more similar I feel." As he spoke, Wen Fenglin took out his leather armor and carefully took out a photo that had already been molded. The photo was in black and white. The pixels back then didn't seem to be very high. Even the facial features on his face were blurry. However, the photo was well preserved. The woman in the photo was gentle and beautiful with a peaceful smile. But at first glance, Yu Lily felt a sense of familiarity with him. Like. Chapter 1246. Surrogacy. 24 to 25 years ago, how did Auntie Xian die? Yu Lily asked as she handed the photo back to him. As soon as she asked the question, she immediately realized that it wasn't a good question. Indeed, when Fenglin smiled, there was a hint of sadness in his smile. Xian's body was on the cold side, and she was naturally afraid of the cold. Fortunately, our family conditions weren't too bad, and we managed to raise her until she was 20. But, in order to be with me, she secretly went to the small house I was renting to look for me in the middle of a snowy day. Wen Fenglin paused for a moment. He sounded remorseful. Perhaps she was frozen. We stayed in the small house for 2 days. On the third day, Xian's body started to feel unwell. 2 words immediately appeared in Yu Lily's mind: elopement. In those days, elopement was a very serious matter. I was a poor student at the time. I was full of ideals and aspirations, but my finances were tight. I searched everywhere for medicine, but Xian's health didn't improve. So I sent her back. When Yu Lily heard the first part of the story, she had already guessed what had happened. But, when she heard the second part, her heart couldn't help but turn cold. How big of a decision did a rich young lady like her have to make before she decided to leave with you? But, this man who had decided to follow her for the rest of his life had sent her back within a few days. What did that girl think? Just thinking about it made Yu Lily feel sorry for the girl. When Wen Fenglin saw the expression on Yu Lily's face, he could roughly guess what she was thinking. With a bitter laugh, he asked, "Do you also think that what I did wasn't right?" Yu Lily saw the bitter expression on Wen Fenglin's face. She hesitated for a moment before nodding her head. I also wanted to keep her by my side, but my circumstances weren't good enough. Xian was a very good girl. She shouldn't have suffered with me. She shouldn't have followed me. Even the most basic of health wasn't guaranteed. Wen Fenglin's small eyes were filled with sadness. If she followed me, she wouldn't have had any protection. We weren't from the same world at all. When she heard that, Yu Lily found it familiar. We weren't from the same world. The anger in her heart flared up. The way he looked at Wen Fenglin had changed. So, if you send her back, will she be able to live well? He thought he was doing it for the good of women, but was it really true? They claimed that it was for her own good, but in reality, it was just because of their selfishness that they did not want to bear that responsibility. Yu Lily gritted her teeth. She liked you so much that she ignored her family's objections to be with a single man like you. Her reputation was ruined, but you sent her back. Wen Fenglin was silent for a long time before he said, "I'm also her murderer." "You're the murderer who killed her." Yu Lily's words were merciless. You men are so full of yourself. What you think is good for her, is it really good for her? How naive. Yu Lily was exasperated. What happened after that? She married that Jin guy? Yes. Yu Lily's conjecture was completely overturned. She had thought that Uncle Wen had no choice but to do this because of Xian's parents' objection. She had never imagined that it was all Uncle Wen's own doing. Chapter 1247. You're really muddle-headed. Yu Lily gritted her teeth and growled. Her heart was filled with disappointment. This was the first time in Wen Fenglin's life that he had been lectured by such a young girl. He didn't feel embarrassed. Instead, he felt even more guilty and remorseful. Xian's family started a timber business after the founding of the People's Republic. They were very influential in Ji province at the time, and they doted on their only daughter to the core. At that time, the Jin family was a good match for them, and they had already set up an engagement. In other words, he was the so-called third party. Sigh. Yu Lily was infuriated just listening to it, but she didn't know what else to say. Wealthy families were particular about a good match. Just look at Ming's mother. That kind of prejudice had existed since ancient times. How could it be easy to change that? But, looking at Wen Fenglin's current situation, she couldn't help but feel sorry for her gentle uncle. Ming gently patted Yu Lily's shoulder with his large, gentle hand. His eyes were unfocused, but his voice was steady as he asked, "Uncle Wen, where are you staying? Let's go back to Kingstown tomorrow. We've been here for a few days already." Wen Fenglin knew that Ming was trying to give him a way out of this embarrassing situation. He smiled and nodded his head. "All right. Let's go. We'll go back together tomorrow. Which hotel are you staying at?" Yu Lily told him the name of the hotel. It was a little far from where Wen Fenglin was staying, but it was on the way. They hailed a cab and returned to the hotel together. On the way, no one spoke first. Yu Lily's mind was filled with countless possibilities. If Wen Fenglin had been more insistent and not sent Xian back, but had treated her himself, would the outcome have been different? What if Xian body wasn't as weak as they had imagined? If Xian hadn't married Jin Xianlang, would she have gone back to Wen Fenglin after she was cured? The more Yu Lily thought about it, the worse she felt. Xian was dead, and Wen Fenglin had been alone for more than 20 years. The man that Xian had chosen in the end had chosen another man, and they had even given birth to a child. Jin Xianlang's actions made Wen Fenglin feel particularly desolate. How hateful. However, Yu Lily also knew that her complaints were unreasonable. How could a man remain single for the rest of his life for a woman who had someone else in her heart? The Jin family was a large family, and he had his responsibilities. Wen Fenglin arrived first. After getting out of the car, Ming leaned over and asked in a low voice, "What are you thinking about?" Yu Lily shook her head, a little annoyed. When she returned to the hotel, she realized that her phone had been switched off. No wonder it was so quiet. He charged his phone and turned it on. There were more than a dozen missed calls. Shinjilia. Ming watched from afar. He looked at Yu Lily with a faint smile and asked, "Aren't you going to call him back?" Looking at his expression, Yu Lily knew that he was up to no good. You. She knew Shen. We master. Can F. Chapter 1248. Yu Lily had just been dragged into the bathroom when she heard her cell phone ringing outside. It was undoubtedly Shinjilia who was calling at this time. This made Yu Lily naturally think of what had happened in the hotel room last night. Her face unconsciously turned red. She looked up and met Ming's eyes. Ming's eyes were filled with playfulness and ambiguity. He pulled her over and whispered, "Why is your face so red? What are you thinking of?" Yu Lily glared at him and didn't answer. She pulled her hand back and said, "I'm going to answer the phone." Answer the phone? Ming raised his eyebrows. There was some pride in his eyes. He immediately smiled and said, "You don't want to take a bath? You go fill the tub. I'll help you bathe later. Together. Why do you have to leave me behind?" Ming pulled her, but he didn't go into the bathroom. Instead, he pulled her to the bedside. Ming picked up the phone that was ringing nonstop and smiled. "I thought it was Shinjilia." "No?" Yu Lily leaned over. "Then who is it?" "Yi Qianqian." He threw the phone to Yu Lily. Yu Lily looked at it and saw that it was indeed Yi Qianqian. She picked up the phone and heard Yi Qianqian's heavy sigh. "Hello, Qianqian. Lily, my life is so hard." Yi Qianqian's voice was bitter, and she immediately started to complain. From Yi Yuyu's injury, she kept complaining about Shen Luo and the Shen family. Finally, she asked Yu Lily to help her ask for leave so that she could take care of her sister. Only then did Yu Lily hang up. In the bathroom, Ming had finished filling the tub. As he unbuttoned his shirt, he walked over to Yu Lily. Yu Lily had just hung up the phone when she felt a slight weight on her body. Ming reached across her chest and held her waist. He gently kissed her ear and said, "It's time to take a bath." Yu Lily's ear was tickled. She slightly moved away and said, "You have to let me go." Ming didn't want to let go. Looking at her petite body, he felt a little regret. If his hand hadn't been injured, it would have been best to carry her into the bathroom and help her take off her clothes and put her in the water. However, he only had one hand now, so he couldn't carry it at all. He could only loosen his grip, his gaze lingering on her body. "You've grown longer." When Yu Lily heard that, she subconsciously touched the hair beside her ear. Just as Yu Lily was about to speak, her phone rang again. This time, It was Shinjilia. Oh Ming clearly saw the name on it and raised his eyebrows slightly. When Yu Lily saw the phone, she was in no hurry to move. She sat on the bed and answered the call. Oh Ming's eyes darkened. He had originally planned to go to the bathroom, but he immediately gave up. He leaned his knee against the side of Yu Lily's body and lowered his body. With one hand, he pushed Yu Lily onto the bed. At the same time, the phone had been connected, and the person on the other side of the line could hear it clearly. Yu Lily immediately covered her mouth and glared at him. Oh Ming acted as if he hadn't seen it and muttered to himself, "Is it Shinjilia? Take it. We'll continue later." Yu Lily stretched out her leg and kicked him, feeling even more embarrassed and annoyed. Chapter 1249. Shinjilia was silent for a moment before he asked, "Lily, are you with Oh Ming?" When Yu Lily was about to speak, Oh Ming suddenly pressed down on her. His big hand reached into her coat and lifted her clothes. This guy is doing it on purpose. Yu Lily held her clothes tightly and stared at him as she answered Shinjilia, "Yes, I just returned to the hotel." Shinjilia felt a sense of crisis and quickly asked, "Have you returned to the hotel? In Oh Ming's room or yours? I'll go find you." Yu Lily's hands were pressing down too hard. He couldn't lift her clothes at all, so he decided not to deal with her clothes. He reached out to her thighs and gently caressed them. Yu Lily slapped his hand hard and lifted her foot to kick it. She replied patiently, "We found a hotel near where Uncle Wen is. We'll go there tomorrow to pick up our luggage." "You're staying together?" Shinjilia heard the subtle sound and felt even more uneasy. He said, "Lily, since you've broken up, you should make a clean break. Return Oh Ming to Uncle Wen, and then come back here. Grandma misses you very much. There's another very important thing that Grandma wants to tell you in person." "What is it?" "Old Mrs. Shin actually has something important to tell me." Yu Lily listened, but she was just listening. Every time old Mrs. Shin talked about something important, it would be a trivial matter. After making a fuss about it, there would be no further details. This time should be similar, so Yu Lily didn't take it to heart. "It's very important. When you come back, I'll let Grandma tell you." Shinjilia's voice was serious. It didn't sound like a joke or a lie. Yu Lily listened, but Oh Ming had already changed his strategy. He directly touched her neck with one hand and gently pressed down. His lips fell on her face. She didn't know whether it was intentional or not, but the place where he kissed made a slight sound. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to pass through the phone. "Let's talk about it tomorrow. It's so late now." "It's not good." Oh Ming's voice sounded very close to the phone. Just as she was about to say something, Oh Ming turned her face around with one hand and kissed her on the lips. Shocked, Yu Lily opened her mouth to speak, but Oh Ming's tongue easily slipped in and gently teased her. Their tongues intertwined, emitting a soft sizzling sound. Yu Lily tried to push him away but failed. Holding the phone in her hand, her heart was beating fast. Oh Ming's hand moved down and pinched her soft and plump breasts. He squinted at the phone, which was still in the middle of a call. He deliberately lowered his voice and said, "Is the call over? Go away." Yu Lily pushed his face away, but he had no intention of leaving. He got a little closer and said, "Are you done? I'm still waiting for you to help me bathe." Could this guy be any more deliberate? Yu Lily didn't know what to do with him. In a low voice, she said, "Go away first. I'm on the phone. I'll help you wash it later." Chapter 1250. All right. Get out." Yu Lily gritted her teeth and took his hand away. However, such an action seemed to have fueled his interest even more. Instead, the giant hand moved even faster. Shinjilia listened to the movement and was silent for a moment. "What are you doing?" he asked. "He's drinking water by the side." "I'm on the phone." "I see." Shinjilia felt a little relieved. "I'll pick you up." Which hotel are you staying at? No, I'll sleep here. Oh Ming's eyes can't move, so I'll take care of him here. Don't worry, I got a double bedroom. Oh Ming squinted at the 1.8-meter long bed and looked at Yu Lily with a faint smile. Yu Lily looked straight ahead and said, I'll go over there tomorrow. You should rest early. I have to help Oh Ming take a bath. It's not convenient for you, you're a girl, I've been with Oh Ming for many years. It's okay to help him take a bath. Yu Lily pretended not to understand Shinjilia's concerns. I'm hanging up. Wait! Shinjilia shouted. Yu Lily paused. When she was about to put the phone back to her ear, Oh Ming pulled her over. After hanging up, he threw the phone aside. He hasn't finished yet. Yu Lily kicked him. Her tone was inadvertently coquettish. However, when he heard the voice, Oh Ming's eyes darkened, and he pulled down the pants that he had just peeled off halfway. Yu Lily pulled her pants up and kicked him again. She said angrily, Go away. Take a bath. Oh Ming pulled her up and said, I'll help you take off your clothes. No. One by one. I'll help you wash first, and then I'll wash myself. Yu Lily pulled her pants up and put them on. When she stood up, she heard the phone ring again. It was Shinjilia again. Yu Lily answered the phone. Hello. Be careful. Although Oh Ming can't see, he's still a man. Don't let him bully you. Hearing this, Yu Lily felt even more guilty. When she was about to say something, she looked up and saw the strange look in Oh Ming's eyes. Okay. Go to bed early. Good night. Yu Lily said goodbye. After a few seconds, she hung up. What did he say? Oh Ming leaned over and asked in a low voice. You told me to be careful of you, you big pervert. She pushed him away again and stomped toward the bathroom. Oh Ming raised his eyebrows and hugged her from behind. He smiled and said, Is that so? Is he so worried about me? I'm worried about you too. Oh Ming nodded in agreement and said, You're right to worry about me. Come, let's go in. Go. Help me take off my clothes. Oh Ming pulled her hand and put it on his clothes. I can't take my hands off. Yu Lily looked at him suspiciously. When she saw his indifferent and serious look, she reached out and took off his clothes one by one. His shirt was taken off. Yu Lily tugged at him and said, Come in. But Oh Ming was still not satisfied. He said, Pants. Yu Lily then turned around and reluctantly helped him take off his clothes. But as soon as she got closer, she clearly noticed that he was not calm. Yu Lily blushed. She looked up and saw that Oh Ming was still pretending to be human. Chapter 1251. Let's go down together. Oh Ming pulled her along and stepped into the bathtub. Yu Lily shook his hand off and said, I'll take off my coat. When Oh Ming heard that, he loosened his grip. Unexpectedly, after Yu Lily loosened her grip, she turned around and walked out, closing the bathroom door on her way out. Oh Ming was stunned and sat down in the bathtub. He patted the water and waited for Yu Lily to come back. But he didn't know what Yu Lily was doing outside. A few minutes passed, and she didn't show any intention of coming back. Yu Lily, what are you doing? Oh Ming shouted. Yu Lily heard Oh Ming's shout from outside, but she had no desire to respond. She held her phone and sent a message to Yi Qianqian. Oh Ming waited for a few more minutes and couldn't wait any longer. He didn't need to think to know that Yu Lily was probably unhappy. Did I do something to make her unhappy? Was it about the phone call just now? Or was it about me asking her to help me undress? Or was it because I wanted to bathe with her? Oh Ming couldn't be sure. But the water was getting colder and colder. Oh Ming had no choice but to use one hand. The other hand couldn't touch the water. Oh Ming raised one hand, and his hand was sore. He dilly-dallied for a few more minutes before shouting, "You Lily, I was wrong. Yu Lily heard those words from outside, and her typing hand paused. The anger and displeasure that had just risen in her heart slowly dissipated. After informing Yi Qianqian, Yu Lily put her phone aside to charge it and walked in the direction of the bathroom. When she opened the bathroom door, she saw Ming sitting in the bathtub. His head, neck, and body were covered in bubbles. At that moment, as if he heard Yu Lily coming in, he opened one of his squinted eyes, and his whole face was wrinkled. He supported himself with one hand and touched his hair with the other. When he saw her come over, he closed his eyes again. "It hurts my eyes. Help me quickly." Ming's voice was full of grievance. It sounded like he was acting like a spoiled child. When Yu Lily heard the noise, she walked over with a straight face. She took the shower head next to her, turned on the water, and poured it on Ming's head. "Stand up." Yu Lily grabbed his hand and helped him to walk out. The bathtub was a little slippery, so Ming stepped out and deliberately pressed his whole body against hers. Yu Lily pushed him away. "Walk properly, or you can wash yourself." Ming immediately straightened up and walked out, leaving Yu Lily to do whatever she wanted. "Take it, I'll help you dry your hair." Yu Lily stuffed the shower head into his palm and warned, "Don't get me wet. I don't have any clothes to change into. Unless you don't want to go back to Kingstown tomorrow." With one sentence, Ming chased away all the dishonesty in his heart. He obediently allowed Yu Lily to help him bathe. Even he didn't expect himself to be so obedient. When he was dragged to the bed with a towel wrapped around him, Ming looked up at Yu Lily's face. It was a little better than before, but it still looked a little unhappy. "What's wrong? Are you in a bad mood?" Ming pulled her with his big hand and asked in a low voice. Yu Lily pursed her lips and said, "Ming, can you respect me?" Chapter 1252. Yu Lily was about to help him put on his clothes, but she stopped. She threw the clothes down and turned to leave. "I'm going to take a shower first." Ming could tell that this woman was really angry. He quickly went forward to pull her back and said, "Wait a minute, Yu Lily." Yu Lily stopped in her tracks and turned to look at him. "What's wrong? Why are you so strange? Why are you angry? You should at least tell me." Ming looked at her and didn't know what to say. "You're so strange, and I'm innocent, I'm not angry." Although she said that, her face tightened. "Let go of me. I'm going to take a shower." "Are you angry that I dragged you to take a shower together?" Ming frowned and guessed. However, he quickly rejected this idea in his heart. It wasn't that they hadn't taken a shower together before. On the contrary, it was as common as having a meal. What was there to be angry about? After thinking about it, Ming still felt that it might be because of what happened when she was on the phone. "No, let go." Yu Lily pried his hand away, and her expression became even more unpleasant. Seeing Yu Lily like this, Ming suddenly thought of the strategy to win back an ex-girlfriend that he had read a few days ago. If your girlfriend suddenly got angry, and you didn't know the reason, then no matter what, it was most important to first admit your mistake. Ming pursed his lips and lowered his head. "I was wrong." Yu Lily couldn't help but look at him. "Did you take the wrong medicine today?" He admitted his mistake so often, and twice in a row. Ming was a little embarrassed when he heard that. His cheeks turned red, and he coughed softly. "I don't know why you're angry, but if I made you angry, tell me, okay?" "That again." Yu Lily sighed and said, "Ming, I'll tell you later. I'm going to take a shower first. Let go of me." "Are you really angry?" As he spoke, he let go of her hand. Yu Lily didn't answer. She took a bathrobe and went into the bathroom. After the shower, Yu Lily washed their undergarments and used a hairdryer to blow-dry them. By the time she was done, more than an hour had passed. Ming could see that Yu Lily was doing it on purpose. Usually, Yu Lily wouldn't dawdle like this. But, thinking that Yu Lily was still angry, Ming didn't dare to rush her. He kept thinking about what Yu Lily had just said, "Oh Ming, can you respect me a little?" Did he disrespect her? He seemed to respect her quite a bit. Yu Lily's short hair had just been blow-dried, and it was a little fluffy on her head. She walked over and saw Oh Ming staring at her. Ignoring him, she turned off the light and climbed into bed. She wrapped herself in the quilt and lay down. Oh Ming lay down obediently, turned around, and looked at her. Yu Lily's back was facing him, so he couldn't tell what she was feeling. He reached out a hand and gave her a gentle push. "Didn't you say you would tell me after bathing? Now, tell me." "Oh Ming, do you want to be with me?" Oh Ming was baffled. He put a hand on her waist and said, "Of course I want to. Otherwise, do you think I came all the way here to play the trick of injuring myself just for fun?" Chapter 1253. Hearing that, Oh Ming felt a little uneasy. He leaned over and pulled her, saying in a deep voice, "Turn around." "What do you mean by that? Do you not want to marry me?" But Yu Lily didn't turn around. She kept her back to him and said, "Marriage is not just about you." Hearing that, Oh Ming roughly guessed what Yu Lily wanted to say. Oh Ming sat up and said in a serious voice, "I will take care of my mother. You just have to be ready to be with me." "It's not just that, Oh Ming." Yu Lily was wrapped in the quilt with her back to Oh Ming. Her eyes were staring at the darkness in front of her. She knew that Oh Ming was already alert. If she didn't handle it well, he would be angry. She knew that Oh Ming's patience was extremely short. But there were some things that she had wanted to say for a long time. Especially after hearing Uncle Wen's story today, the desire in her heart became stronger. "What else is there?" Oh Ming stared at her and said, "Turn around and let's talk face to face." Yu Lily held the quilt tighter and said, "You never understood what I wanted and what I wanted to do. Just like when we broke up before, you only knew that you couldn't see, so you said those things to drive me away and force me to break up with you. But did you think about my feelings?" Oh Ming's eyes darkened. He looked at Yu Lily's back and asked, "Just because of that?" The tragedy of Uncle Wen and Xian was caused by this kind of self-righteousness. You thought that you were doing it for each other's good, but in fact, you were selfish. Why couldn't you respect each other and give each other a chance to choose? Oh Ming was silent and crawled in front of her. Yu Lily shrank to the side. When she sensed that Oh Ming was coming over, she subconsciously moved to the back to make room for him. It was a completely subconscious action without any thought. When Oh Ming crawled over, Yu Lily realized what she had done. Oh Ming didn't notice her daze. He lay down in front of her and asked, "Just because of that?" Yu Lily stared at him and nodded. "Silly girl, have you ever thought that if Uncle Wen doesn't send Xian back, Xian will die even faster? The Qi family is rich and powerful. They will definitely treat their daughter well. If she were to follow Uncle Wen, with Qi Xian's health, she might not even last half a year. I don't think Uncle Wen did anything wrong. If it were me, I would probably do the same." Yu Lily gritted her teeth and pushed him away. She said angrily, "Everything I said just now was for nothing." Oh Ming was amused by her reaction. He held her in his arms and said, "No, what you said makes sense. Don't hug me, speak properly." Oh Ming had no intention of letting go. He said, "I didn't consider your feelings in the past. I won't do it again. It's all my fault. Yu Lily, can you forgive me?" "No sincerity." Yu Lily punched him in the chest. "Do you know how disgusting the things you said before were? I really want to kill you." Oh Ming chuckled and moved closer to her face. In a low voice, he said, "In the end, you still can't bear to. But, it's all thanks to you that my eyes have recovered." Yu Lily looked up and reached out to touch his eyes. "Is it really because of me?" "Yeah, this is probably the power of love," Oh Ming said. "Go, get lost." "No, my hand hurts." "Let me hug you for a while," Oh Ming said. Chapter 1254. Oh Ming wrapped his arms around Yu Lily's waist and didn't forget to look up at her. Yu Lily sensed his probing. She pressed her hand against his and said, I'll let you die from the pain. Don't be serious. How can that be? I'm so serious. When I lie, my face turns red and my heart beats faster. If you don't believe me, feel it. As he spoke, he pulled Yu Lily's hand over to his chest and said, It's still the same as usual. That means I'm telling the truth. Yu Lily was amused by his shameless words. She patted him and said, You can blush and have a heartbeat? Who are you kidding? Oh Ming saw that she finally laughed, and his lips unconsciously curled up. He said, Other than you, there's no one else I can tease. He reached out and hugged her tighter. In a low voice, he said, I don't know what kind of person I am in your heart, but I'm serious about you. Yu Lily, I want to marry you, and I want to be with you forever. His voice was low and deep, and his words caused everyone's hearts to tremble. Yu Lily looked up at him. In the darkness, his eyes seemed unusually bright. Even if she couldn't see anything in front of her, Yu Lily could still feel that his eyes were burning and burning. Do you know, I envy second brother so much. Second brother, Li Sicheng. He pretended to be dead for so many years, but when he came back, his family was still there, and his wife was still there. She even helped him give birth to a pair of twins. Second brother's daughter-in-law looked very useless, but who knew that she survived those 4 years alone with 2 children and such a big company? Yu Lily looked down and nodded. Qianqian is indeed very powerful. She had always been. Su Qianxi looked soft and weak, but her heart was stronger than anyone else's. She envied her very much. She had always envied her. Their whole family is amazing. Oh Ming rubbed Yu Lily's head and whispered, The reason why second brother dares to do it is because he knows that he can go back at any time. Whether it is his family or his wife, they will always be waiting for him. Yu Lily reached out and put her arms around his waist. They have 3 brothers, and you are the only child in your family. Don't do that kind of thing. It's too dangerous. Yes, I want to do this kind of thing, but I have to get married first. Yes, a family. Yu Lily heard it and kept it in mind. But in his heart, he still felt a little empty. Yu Lily closed her eyes and hugged him. She patted his back gently and said, Go to sleep. It was rare that Oh Ming didn't touch her. He hugged her and gently closed his eyes. A dreamless night. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw Oh Ming's bare chest in front of her. Gently taking his hand away, Yu Lily tiptoed toward the bathroom. After washing up, Oh Ming was already awake. Good morning. Oh Ming seemed to be in a particularly good mood today. His smile was as bright as the sun. Yu Lily looked at him and nodded. She then walked over in her slippers and said, I helped you squeeze out the toothpaste. The razor and aftershave are all ready. You can go by yourself. Oh Ming was especially well behaved today. He obediently went to brush his teeth and wash his face. After the 2 of them changed their clothes, they went to the hotel where Shinjilia was staying. After collecting her luggage, she met up with Shinjilia and old Mrs. Shin. Chapter 1255. When Shinjilia saw them, his lips curled up, but he couldn't bring himself to smile. Oh Ming's appearance were obviously cleaner than yesterday, and even his spirits seemed to be a lot better. There was no doubt that this was all thanks to Yu Lily. Sure enough, with a woman taking care of him, even his mood improved. Old Mrs. Shin didn't notice her grandson's strange look. She walked over with a smile and said, Boy, you look more handsome than yesterday. Oh Ming looked ahead, his eyes unfocused, and his face blank. When he heard that, his eyes couldn't help but sparkle. He smiled and said, Is that so? Thank you for the compliment. Do you have any plans for today? I'm going back to the capital with the youngest. I've been playing outside for too long. As she said that, she leaned over and asked mysteriously, You and Lily are back together again? Oh Ming's eyes curved. His joy was self-evident, but he didn't directly admit it. He said, "You should ask Lily." When old Mrs. Shen saw that, she pouted and looked at him with disgust. But when she remembered that he couldn't see it anymore, she immediately snorted and whispered, "Lily is too soft-hearted. If it were me, I wouldn't forgive you. But I have something to tell you. Go back and tell your mother." Huh? Old Mrs. Shen's voice was very soft, and it sounded mysterious. This was the first time Ming had been so close to old Mrs. Shen, and it was also the first time he had spoken to her so calmly. "I'm going to take Lily as my granddaughter." Ming was surprised to hear that, but he wasn't that shocked. Old Mrs. Shen's temperament was a little strange. She had taken Shen Manting, who she knew wasn't her own granddaughter, as a granddaughter. Based on the old lady's love for you, Lily, it wasn't surprising that she would take her as a granddaughter. "Did you tell Lily?" "No, I was afraid she wouldn't agree, so I came with you to persuade her." "Do it with me?" Ming laughed. "I'm not the one you're interested in. I can't make decisions about her." They had almost fallen out last night. If it weren't for his wit, he might not have been able to coax her today. If Lily knew that old Mrs. Shen had bypassed her and told him about it directly, she might even be unhappy. "In my opinion, you should talk to her yourself. She has already changed to calling you grandma. If you mention it again, won't it be a sure thing? Then I have to tell you, you have to help me get some wind later." "Sure." Ming agreed without hesitation. Old Mrs. Shen was relieved. She turned to look at Lily and held her hand affectionately. "Let's go have breakfast." "Lily, I want to eat that chicken foot." Lily smiled and said, "All right, let's go." She quickly stopped in her tracks and turned to look at Ming. Unexpectedly, Shenjilia had already walked over to Ming and said, "Leave it to me. You go with Grandma first." Lily felt a little embarrassed. Just as she was about to say something, old Mrs. Shen pulled her back and said, "Let's go." When he saw Lily being dragged away by his grandmother, the smile on Shenjilia's face finally fell. He turned to Ming and asked, "Last night, you were the one who didn't let Lily go, weren't you?" Chapter 1256. Secretly? Shenjilia laughed bitterly when he heard that. Even if he had secretly learned from Ming, he wouldn't have been as successful as this guy. They were both men, but the difference between them was more than just a little. "You're such a jerk." Shenjilia reached out and punched Ming's shoulder. He didn't use too much force. "I really don't know what Lily likes about you. How can someone like you have such a good woman who is so devoted to you? The world is really unfair." In his opinion, Ming was more than a scumbag. He was a very, very scumbag. How could such a scumbag get such a good woman? Shenjilia couldn't help but start to doubt himself. The world has never been fair. The reason Lily chose me in the end is probably because the heavens felt that I was more suitable than you. That's why they rewarded her to me. Ming's voice sounded a little smug. The boasting in his voice was so annoying that Shenjilia couldn't hold it in. However, the seriousness in his words was enough to move one's heart. "No matter what, I'm now her brother. You have to treat her well. If you bully her, I'll fly from the capital to Kingstown to beat you up." Shenjilia patted Ming's shoulder and tugged at his shirt. "Let's go. Don't say that I bullied a blind man. That would be a big sin." Ming smiled and followed her without saying another word. Lily had been worried that there would be some conflict behind them. But, unexpectedly, the two of them walked in tandem, looking exceptionally harmonious. Lily was finally able to relax. Old Mrs. Shen quickly pulled her into a breakfast restaurant. The few of them sat down together. Lily naturally sat next to Ming and helped him with the cutlery and food. After ordering the dishes, old Mrs. Shen said what she had prepared in advance. "Lily, are you interested in coming back to the capital with Grandma?" Lily asked. Lily looked at old Mrs. Shen and said, "But I have to go to work tomorrow. If I go now, I won't be able to stay for long." "It's fine. You can go next time if you can't go now. I have an idea that I'd like to share with you. Huh? Yu Lily poured a cup of tea for old Mrs. Shen and looked up at her seriously. Lily grew up without parents or family. If one day you get married and you don't have a family, what will you do? Old Mrs. Shen said righteously, Lily, let my family be your maternal family. Be my granddaughter, and let Shinjilia be your older brother, okay? Hearing that, Yu Lily was stunned. Old Mrs. Shen knew that her words were a little sudden, but the desire in her heart grew stronger. She said, when the time comes, I will take you back to the capital and take you to see Shinjilia's parents. If you want, the youngest's father will be your father, and the youngest's mother will be your mother. Is that okay? Yu Lily didn't know how to react. Her heart was beating faster and faster. At a loss, he looked at Oh Ming. Oh Ming gently reached out and placed his hand on her thigh. In a low voice, he said, don't be afraid. You can consider it. Granny Shen is doing this for your own good. Her voice became even softer as she said, Granny Shen likes you very much, and she treats you very well. It would be a good idea if you became part of her family. Chapter 1257. But, the Shen family was such a big family. Could they accommodate an outsider like her? But, old Mrs. Shen had already brought Shen Manting home. Would the Shens tolerate bringing another person home? But, old Mrs. Shen had already been publicly acknowledged to be brainless. Would anyone believe what she said? Furthermore, Yu Lily had never considered this question before. Old Mrs. Shen's sudden mention of it surprised Yu Lily. At the same time, she felt warmth and gratitude in her heart. Oh Ming gently grasped Yu Lily's hand and said in a low voice, you don't need to worry about others now. You only need to consider whether you are willing or not. Yu Lily looked at Oh Ming's face. Oh Ming's gaze deepened as he said, Granny Shen is an elder who is very worthy of respect. In particular, he liked the way he treated Yu Lily so much that he felt comfortable with her. If such an elder could become a real grandmother, it would be different. Oh Ming's voice was very low. Shinjilia and old Mrs. Shen knew that they were talking, but they couldn't hear what he was saying. Yu Lily's expression became more and more moved. It looked like she was already starting to waver. Granny really likes you. Come home with me. In the future, just treat the Shen family in the capital as your family. How does that sound? Old Mrs. Shen looked at Yu Lily. Her cloudy eyes softened. Yu Lily was still in a trance. When she came back to her senses, her eyes began to burn again. Can I? Yu Lily looked at Shinjilia. Shinjilia looked at Yu Lily and replied, yes, of course. When he said that, he felt an indescribable sourness in his heart. It was uncomfortable, unhappy, sad, and painful. But, he was destined to never be able to come between her and Oh Ming. In the past few days, although they hadn't made it clear, it was obvious that Yu Lily couldn't let go of Oh Ming. As for Oh Ming, his eyes and hands couldn't move, but he had the guts to chase her all the way to Fujian without anyone by his side. It was clear that Oh Ming's feelings for Yu Lily were very deep. Since that was the case, he didn't want to be the stick that separated them. Even if he couldn't be a man, being an older brother wasn't a bad idea. Looking at Yu Lily, Shinjilia teased, from now on, I'm your older brother. Call me older brother. Yu Lily burst into laughter. Her eyes were red, and she whispered, brother. Her voice wasn't loud, but when it reached Shinjilia's ears, it was enough to shatter his heart into pieces. But at this time, he couldn't lose face in front of his sister and son-in-law. Since he couldn't bring himself to laugh, he decided not to. With a straight face, Shinjilia nodded his head and said, well, be a good girl. I'll take care of you in the future. If Oh Ming bullies you, I'll take revenge for you. Old Mrs. Shen was also overjoyed. Her face overflowed with joy, but her cloudy eyes flickered with a silver light. Good, good, good. Old Mrs. Shen was elated. You're more like my granddaughter than Shen Manting. How good would it have been if I had met you back then? Shen Manting's destiny was fated to be with the Shen family, but her destiny was filled with malice. If they could endure this baleful aura, she would ensure the prosperity of the Shen family. Chapter 1258. Bringing her home was more or less a gamble. Old Mrs. Shen still took it to heart. She sighed and said, "But it's not too late to meet him now. Fortunately, it's you." "Thank you, Grandma." Old Mrs. Shen nodded. She looked at Yu Lily and said with a smile, "You are a good girl. When O Ming's hand gets better, you can come to the capital. Grandma will always welcome you." Before Yu Lily could say anything, O Ming had already agreed. "Sure. That's settled then. Give me a call when you're coming." "All right." The dishes were soon served. Perhaps because of her good mood, the old lady ate a lot. While eating, she didn't forget to ask Yu Lily to eat. Yu Lily's heart was warm, comfortable, and relaxed. After dinner, Yu Lily and O Ming packed their luggage and sent Shenjilia and old Mrs. Shen to the airport. Yu Lily watched as Shenjilia and old Mrs. Shen passed through the security check. She held onto O Ming's hand, feeling a little reluctant to let him go. Looking up at O Ming's handsome face, she felt a little disappointed and regretful. She said reluctantly, "They're gone." "Yes, let's go." He looked down at Yu Lily and said softly, "When we're done with our business, we'll go to the capital. I'm just painting at work. It's nothing much. You, on the other hand, have to wait for your hand to recover." Yu Lily looked at his hand. "Does it still hurt?" "It doesn't hurt." O Ming allowed her to hold his arm as they walked forward. "How can you have nothing to do when you get back?" "Leave it at work for now. When we get back, we'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau." Civil Affairs Bureau, those 3 words made Yu Lily's heart skip a beat. She lifted her eyes and looked into his eyes. O Ming looked down at the same time. Their eyes met, and they saw their own reflections in each other's eyes. "Your mother, Shu, act first and report later." O Ming didn't feel guilty at all. He continued calmly, "When the time comes, it will be too late. No matter how much she objects, it will be useless. If we don't want to, she can't force us to divorce, can she? If your mother finds out, won't she be furious?" "I'm not angry. I've done things worse than this," O Ming said, pursing his lips. "And my mother doesn't dislike you as much as you think. She's just very picky with her words, but her temper is actually very good." When Yu Lily heard that, she pouted and muttered, "Just like you?" "No, my mom's temper is better than mine. My temper is like my dad's. Don't just look at my dad. If you piss him off, he'll become very fierce. He'll even hit people with a feather duster. When I was young, I was whipped a lot." As he spoke, his body trembled. Yu Lily laughed and patted him on the shoulder. "Don't scare me. I'll be traumatized in the future." O Ming chuckled and said, "That won't happen. My dad and uncle Wen both like you very much. They won't be mean to you. At most, they'll be mean to me." "Really?" "Yes, really." O Ming nodded and said, "Also, it's not just about settling the marriage certificate for my parents. More importantly, we have to make a trip to F-Town." F-Town, the woman who had given birth to her and then abandoned her, was where she was. Chapter 1259. Otherwise, Yu Lily couldn't understand why someone who was willing to pay for a surrogate would abandon her in the end. O Ming nodded her head and said, "Think on the bright side. Don't be so pessimistic." Yu Lily smiled and held his arm as they walked toward the exit of the airport. At a time like this, she could only leave it to fate. After so many years, it wasn't important for Yu Lily to find her biological parents. What if the parents she found turned out to be scum? Yu Lily thought to herself. Soon, she took a taxi with O Ming to the station and met up with Wen Fenglin, who had already arrived. The 3 of them took the high-speed train back to Kingstown. Yu Lily slept soundly the entire way. When she woke up, it was already 3 or 4 hours later. The sky was a little dark, and the weather didn't look too good. She accompanied Oh Ming to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor said that he was recovering well. Yu Lily was relieved and returned home alone. Oh Ming's big show hadn't started yet. She couldn't ruin his plan by herself. As soon as she got home, she started a video call with Yi Qianqian. Unexpectedly, Yi Qianqian looked very aggrieved. As soon as she saw Yu Lily, she burst into tears and shouted, "Lily, my dear Lily, I now find that your life is really too good. Oh, my dear Lily. At least you have a man who treats you well. My sister. Sigh. What's wrong?" Yu Lily saw that Yi Qianqian's face was obviously more haggard than it had been a few days ago. She felt a little sorry for her and asked, "Could it be that Shenjilia's brother did something bad to your sister again?" Sigh. Don't mention it. Shenjilia is still putting on airs. How can his brother be so annoying? They really don't share the same mother. Is the difference so big? Yi Qianqian's voice was full of indignation. I'm so angry. Do you know? Sister. Yi Qianqian's angry words were stopped in her throat by a soft voice. She couldn't say a word. Yu Lily knew that it had to be Yi Yuyu. Give me a moment. I'll talk to you later. Yi Qianqian lowered her voice and ended the video call. Yi Qianqian put her phone away and turned around. She hurried to Yi Yuyu's bedside and asked, "What's wrong? Help me pack my things. Let's get out of the hospital." Yi Yuyu's voice was still a little weak. She looked at Yi Qianqian with a serious expression. When Yi Qianqian heard that, she instinctively glanced at Yi Yuyu's condition. Both of his hands were badly injured. His left hand was fractured, his right hand was sprained, and his wrist was swollen like a bluish-green peach. His hand was in a cast, and one of his feet was wrapped tightly. He didn't seem to be in a good state. Under such circumstances, he actually wanted to leave the hospital? No, you still need to stay in the hospital for observation for a while. You stay well. I promised Dad that I would take good care of you. How do you want me to explain to Dad? As she spoke, Yi Qianqian became even angrier. Just how big of a business does your mother run? She didn't even come to see her daughter when she was injured to this extent. Is she going to abandon her daughter now that she has a new son? Yi Yuyu laughed bitterly when she heard that. She's your mother too. Chapter 1260. If I'd known this would happen, would have insisted. I would have followed that woman. If you had followed Dad, you would have ended up better than with this woman. Yi Qianqian looked at Yi Yuyu. Her heart was filled with sympathy and complicated emotions. It's been hard on you. Sis, I want to be discharged. No. It was an unsurprising rejection. But this time, it wasn't Yi Qianqian who said it. It was a man's voice. The voice was as deep as a cello. Turning his head, he saw a tall and straight young man with an intimidating aura. When Yi Qianqian saw him, she was shocked and asked, "It's you?" When Yi Yuyu saw the man, her expression was equally complicated. She greeted him, "GM Li." When Li Jinnan saw Yi Yuyu's expression, he frowned and asked, "How did you end up like this?" Li Jinnan's aura was too strong. He didn't bother to hide the killing intent he exuded. This man didn't seem too happy. Yi Qianqian couldn't help but take a step back. She glanced at Yi Yuyu and asked, "Is this your boss?" Yi Yuyu replied. Her gaze fell on Li Jinnan as she said, "I'm sorry, GM Li. I've let you down. TSK. Look at how polite he is. He's acting as if they're strangers." Yi Qianqian could more or less tell that there was an ambiguous relationship between the two of them. Following that, GM Li would definitely walk up to her with great concern and say with a gentle and kind expression, "It's all right. As long as you're fine." Or, given our relationship, do we still need to say such things? However, this guy wasn't going to play by the rules. When Li Jinnan heard that, his almost perfect features turned cold. He took a step forward and said, "If you know that you've let me down, don't do anything stupid. If you're discharged at this time, do you want all the care I've given you to be fed to the dogs?" What a harsh statement. If Yi Yu insisted on being discharged, wouldn't that make her an ingrate? Yi Qianqian secretly gave Li Jinnan a thumbs up. Indeed, when Yi Yu heard that, she felt even worse. She looked down and said, "I'm sorry, but I don't want that person to pay for my medical bills anymore." Shen Luo and insisted on paying for her medical expenses. No matter what she or Yi Qianqian said, he insisted on sending money to the hospital regularly. Wasn't it to let her know that he had married her and that he would take responsibility for her? However, she did not want this kind of responsibility. Li Jinnan raised an eyebrow. "That person? Your husband?" The last 3 words were like thorns, making people feel uncomfortable. Whenever he thought of her, he would remind himself that she was a married woman. "Yes. This is considered a work injury. Our company should pay all the medical expenses for you. I will return all the medical expenses paid by your husband and hire a professional nurse for you. You can rest in peace. When you recover, don't forget to make money for me." Li Jinnan stood tall and straight. His hands were in his pockets. He looked at Yi Yu and finally took his hands out of his pockets. When the hand reached out, it was holding a piece of candy. A fruit candy wrapped in colorful reflective paper. When Yi Qianqian saw the candy, her eyes widened. Chapter 1261. With that, he turned and strode out of the ward. Yi Yu looked at the candy in front of her and felt a little strange. This is, from Li Jinnan. It really doesn't match his image. But he had come all the way from Kingstown just to give her a candy? As she thought about it, Yi Qianqian picked up the candy on the blanket. TSK, a candy from 1,000 miles away. It's a small gift, but it means a lot. He even paid off all your medical bills. Yu, why do I feel that your boss seems to be interested in you? Yi Qianqian raised her eyebrows and smiled sinisterly. This man is not bad. He's handsome and capable, and I've never heard of any scandals. He's a good man. If you can win him over, it'll be good too. Don't talk nonsense. I'm already married. Yi Yu looked unhappy. Eat the candy if you like it. I don't like this kind of child stuff. This marriage of yours, other than getting a marriage certificate and earning some heartache, what else does it have? If you ask me, that *tch Shen Luo and isn't good enough for you. Yi Yu didn't say anything. She slowly closed her eyes. When Yi Qianqian saw that, she felt that she was asking for it. She shut her mouth resentfully. She placed the candy on the counter and said, "I'll put my friendship here. I'm going out to make a call to my friend." "Okay," Yi Yu replied without opening her eyes. Yi Qianqian's footsteps faded away. When the door of the ward was closed, Yi Yu opened her eyes. She turned her head and looked at the candy wrapped in beautiful colorful paper. She reluctantly reached out and grabbed it. With great difficulty, she took it out and examined it for a long time. After confirming that it was just an ordinary candy, she felt a little disappointed. I thought there would be a small note inside. Otherwise, would he really come all the way just to give me a candy? That's too strange. After thinking about it, Yi Yu wrapped the candy up again and placed it under her pillow. When Li Jinnan walked out of the ward, he realized that his face was burning. Why do I feel like I'm a thief? Uncle, are you going to coax a girl? If a girl is in a bad mood, she'll feel better after eating something sweet. Here, it's for you. To actually listen to a little brat's words, really, Li Jinnan was speechless. When he recalled the strange look in Yi Qianqian's eyes, he felt even more embarrassed. That woman is Yi Yu's sister, isn't she? After some thought, he took out his cell phone and called Yi Yu's cell phone. Yi Yu had placed her cell phone by her side. When she heard it ring, she turned her head to look at it. The name, Mr. Li, was particularly eye-catching. Reluctantly, he picked up the phone, put it on speaker, and called out, "GM Li, what's up?" "Yes, I'm going to sign the contract now. I'll handle your matter, but it might be a little late. You just need to focus on recuperating." So it was just a meeting to sign a contract, so, visiting her was just on the way? Strangely, Yi Yuyu felt a sense of relief and replied, "Thank you, GM Li. Gratitude doesn't come with words. Actions were needed for everything." Before Yi Yuyu could reply, she heard him say, "I'm hanging up." Then, there was the sound of the phone being hung up. The ward was quiet again. Chapter 1262. Yu Lily chatted with Yi Qianqian for a long time before she hung up the phone. After a few days of fun, Yu Lily was in a very good state. She turned on the digital screen and painted until she couldn't keep her eyes open. Then she climbed into bed and went to sleep. The next day, at about 8:30, the doorbell rang. Yu Lily was sleepy. She went to the door and saw it was Oh Ming. Oh Ming looked a little handsome today. He was wearing a burgundy suit that he hadn't seen for a long time. The scars on his face seemed to have healed a lot. He looked energetic and happy. Seeing Oh Ming, Yu Lily was full of energy. She quickly opened the door and asked, "Why are you here?" Oh Ming squeezed in and raised his eyebrows. "Did you forget what you were going to do today?" As he spoke, he took out a dark purple book from his coat pocket. It was a household register. Yu Lily's eyes widened. "Did you steal it?" "Shoo, go and wash your face. Look at the saliva on your face." Oh Ming reached out and wiped her face with a smile. Yu Lily subconsciously touched her face. Her cheeks were burning, and she quickly walked inside. But when she looked in the mirror, she found that in addition to looking a little sleepy, there was no trace of saliva on her face. "You lied to me." Yu Lily picked up the toothbrush angrily, squeezed the toothpaste, and began to brush. After changing clothes and putting on makeup, Yu Lily went out and found Oh Ming sitting in her room, looking quickly at her digital screen. He had just painted it last night. It was a sex scene. Yu Lily was embarrassed. She quickly covered the screen with both hands and shouted, "I'm done. Let's go." Oh Ming looked up and looked at her with a faint smile. "Good painting." Yu Lily glared at him fiercely, but her face turned red. She roared, "You touch other people's things without their permission. You're so annoying." Yu Lily's eyes widened, and her face turned red. How could it be other people? Oh Ming stood up and took her in his arms. "Soon you will be my wife." Wife, Yu Lily's mood was almost flying. He held her in his arms and quickly walked out of the room. "Wait. Let me get something." Yu Lily shook off his hand and looked at his face. "Do you want to put on some makeup to look more handsome?" "No." Oh Ming bluntly refused. "Go get the things." Yu Lily's lips curled up, and she turned around to find her household register and identification card. There was only one person in her household register. Soon, this household register would be scrapped, right? When he arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau, there were many couples coming and going. Without exception, all of them held hands and were affectionate with each other. However, there were also people queuing up at the divorce window, looking at each other with dark faces. It was the first time for Yu Lily to come to this place. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, it was their turn. The whole time, Yu Lily was a little confused. In the end, when he stamped his handprint and received the 2 red booklets, he was still in a daze. Oh Ming looked at her confused face and unconsciously curled his lips. He quickly bent over to kiss her on the cheek and said, "I'll look at it when we get home." Yu Lily carefully put the marriage certificate in the deepest compartment of her handbag. After zipping it up, she looked up. Her delicate face was full of smiles that could not be concealed. "Let's go eat." Chapter 1263. Hearing the change in the way he addressed her, Yu Lily's lips curled up even more, along with her mood. Let's go for French food, shall we? Your wife will pay the bill. Yu Lily had always liked what Oh Ming liked, but she had never been willing to go to such a luxurious place to eat. Looking at Yu Lily's smiling face, Oh Ming held her in his arms. His lips curled up as he leaned forward with a wicked smile. In a low voice, he asked, do you want your husband to be a gigolo? He's so handsome. It would be a pity not to be a gigolo. Yu Lily raised her eyebrows, and her eyes curved into a crescent shape. Let's go, gigolo. Let's go eat. Oh Ming chuckled and was pulled outside by her. However, just as Yu Lily was about to take a taxi, Oh Ming pulled her and said, you drive. Yu Lily was slightly surprised. You drove here? Oh Ming smiled without saying a word and looked not far away. Yu Lily followed his gaze and blinked. It was a flamboyant red SUV, the Jeep that Yu Lily had always liked. The lines of the car were tough, and the car model was handsome. The red Jeep drove toward them, and the driver quickly got out. Yu Lily recognized him at a glance. Isn't this Su Cheng, Oh Ming's most capable assistant? Su Cheng quickly walked in front of Oh Ming and said, Master Oh. As he spoke, he had already handed over the keys. Oh Ming took the keys and handed them to Yu Lily. In a soft voice, he said, a wedding gift. Do you like it? A wedding gift? There's a wedding gift? Yu Lily smiled and looked at the keys, but she didn't take them. She said, but I don't want it, Oh Ming. She married him and didn't want him to give her any benefits. Oh Ming's mother probably didn't even know that they had gotten married. If she knew, wouldn't it be another disaster? I'm afraid not. Oh Ming shook his head and forced the keys into her palm. I can't drive with my hands, and I'm blind. Before I recover, you have to drive for me. Are you marrying a wife or a chauffeur? Yu Lily glared at him. When she heard that, she seemed to be a little unhappy. Oh Ming smiled and pulled her in the direction of the car. He said, I want both. My wife has to know how to drive. Otherwise, how will I be comfortable in the future? When Su Cheng heard this, his serious face collapsed a little. His cheeks turned red, and he coughed softly. Yu Lily finally reacted. She elbowed him gently and said in a low voice, Are you a hooligan? Oh Ming looked a little innocent. He shrugged and smiled helplessly. What are you thinking about? Your thoughts are too corrupt. Yu Lily was even more embarrassed. She pushed him away, grabbed his car keys, and ran to the driver's seat. Su Cheng watched them leave, then went to take a taxi and went back by himself. When they arrived at the revolving restaurant in Kingstown Tower, Yu Lily and Oh Ming found a table by the window. The place was very quiet. Oh Ming watched Yu Lily order food, then got up and went to the bathroom. Yu Lily sat alone by the window, looking at the distant ground in front of her. The sweet feeling in her heart made her face stiff. But, this feeling, is so good. Ding dong. A soft sound rang out not far behind him. Chapter 1264. The bright red roses, the color of the fire, were so beautiful that they made people intoxicated. Yu Lily was stunned. She looked up and saw Oh Ming's devilish face at a glance. With a smile on his face, Oh Ming stuffed the bouquet in his hand into Yu Lily's arms and said, Here, take it. Yu Lily held the large bouquet of roses in her arms and blinked her eyes. Oh Ming smiled and leaned down to kiss her lips. He whispered, Is it beautiful? Yu Lily smiled brightly. Biting her lower lip, she nodded and asked, Where did you get it from? I said it was a transformation. How can I tell you? Oh Ming lowered his head and kissed her lips again. Yu Lily subconsciously looked around, and her cheeks blushed. In the end, she closed her eyes and responded softly. However, her left hand was suddenly held by Oh Ming. A cold feeling slowly climbed up from between her ring fingers. Yu Lily's heart skipped a beat. She opened her eyes and subconsciously wanted to look at her hand. As soon as she moved her hand away, Ming's lips fell on her cheek. But the corners of his mouth were even wider, and a pair of deep peach blossom eyes looked at her. They were like dots of stars, bright and gorgeous. Yu Lily looked at the diamond ring on her finger. The familiar pattern, the familiar lines. This was clearly the design that Ming had drawn in the study. Is it very familiar? Ming gently stroked her ring finger and whispered, "This is called the most love." The most love. Her nose was inexplicably sour, and a wave of heat rushed up, catching her off guard. Yu Lily's eyes were red, and she looked up at him. "I started preparing a few years ago, and you only gave me this opportunity now. You are too cruel." Ming's voice was full of resentment, laughter, and indescribable gentleness. "There is one more." Ming opened Yu Lily's palm and placed a small cold circle on her palm. It was a man's ring. It matched the women's ring on Yu Lily's hand. It looked tough, but it was very beautiful. Ming reached out his injured left hand toward Yu Lily. He stretched out his hand and looked at Yu Lily with a smile. "Come." Yu Lily helped him put the ring on. He held her hand in his and kissed the back of it. "Honey, let's eat. We'll go home after that." Yu Lily looked at him with sparkling eyes and nodded. "Yes." When the dishes were served and they finished eating, Yu Lily and Ming went downstairs together. Perhaps it was because they were in a good mood, or perhaps it was because they were getting married today, but both of them were dressed exceptionally well. Many people were looking at them. After looking at Ming's face, they looked at Yu Lily's face with envy in their eyes. Yu Lily went down to the garage to get her car. After she drove the car out of the garage, she was a little confused. Going home at this time? But where was their home? Which home should he return to? Ming turned his head, raised his eyebrows, and asked, "What's wrong?" Yu Lily turned her head and smiled. "Now, where are we going?" "Let's go home, back to our home." "Then, where should I go?" "To our new house, of course." "Drive straight ahead." "New house? A new house that only newlyweds would have?" Yu Lily's face turned red. She started the car, stepped on the accelerator, and drove in the direction that Ming had indicated. The location of the new house was very quiet, but the location was not remote at all. Chapter 1265. Am I going to be Li Xiqing's neighbor in the future? Is the new house here? Yeah, Ming answered, pointed to the back, and said, "Drive inside." Yu Lily listened to Ming's words and quickly drove the car to a villa that covered a large area and looked very grand. The entrance was very big, and two new iron doors that looked a little retro were open from the inside. Yu Lily drove the car in, and as soon as she entered, she saw a big front yard. There were 2 flower beds in the front yard. Yu Lily parked the car in the open space next to the flower beds and then got out of the car. It's so beautiful. It was spring, and the flowers were in full bloom, bright and beautiful. In the middle of the 2 flower beds, there was a wide avenue. Let's go in. Ming took her hand and walked straight inside. Yu Lily looked at the big and empty villa and felt a little strange. It was much bigger than the villa in Xishan where she used to live. Su Qing came out of nowhere and shouted, "Master Madam." As he said that, he opened the door. As for Yu Lily, she was lost in thought when she heard the word "Madam." "Madam? Is he calling me?" After entering, Yu Lily found that the decoration inside was also the style that she liked. It was simple and elegant, but it had everything that should be there. It had a strong modern minimalist style. Inside the house, it seemed that there was an aromatherapy, and it smelled very good. It was also the jasmine fragrance that Yu Lily liked very much. "We will live here in the future. Do you like it?" Ming took her hand and whispered with his head down, "I have been preparing for a long time, and I can finally move in." "Is this also something that you have been preparing for several years?" Yu Lily looked at him, a little incredulous. Oh Ming smiled but did not speak. Looking around, he saw that everything had been branded with Yu Lily's mark. The car and the house were all bought in Yu Lily's name. However, there was no need to tell her this. Let's go, I will show you. The villa was divided into 2 floors. The first floor was the living room, the kitchen, the dining room, the bathroom, the gym, and the balcony. The second floor was filled with rooms. There was a study, a master bedroom, a second bedroom, and a guest room. The place was very spacious. Oh Ming pulled Yu Lily into the room. The walk-in closet was especially large. It was comparable to the room that Yu Lily was currently living in at Yi Qianqian's place. The room was so big that it was empty. The bathroom was twice the size of the one in the West Mountain Villa. Especially that jacuzzi, it was huge and wide. Yu Lily looked at the huge bathtub and blushed. But she quickly lowered her head and turned her face away so that Oh Ming wouldn't see her strangeness. Oh Ming had already seen it. He chuckled and said, "In the future, we can be happy wherever we are." Yu Lily blushed even more and walked out quickly, pretending not to understand. She went to the room. It was a 2-meter diameter giant bed. The main color of the room was red and white, which Yu Lily liked. It looked bright and energetic. It was very comfortable. Everything was prepared for her. How nice, the villa was very big. It took Yu Lily nearly half an hour to walk around. It's such a big place. Are we the only ones living here? Yu Lily looked at him and asked, "Don't you think it's a little empty?" Chapter 1266. The Wuxia villas were famous in Kingstown. The people who could live there were either wealthy or respectable. Li Siqing had bought a villa there a long time ago and moved in early. After returning from a trip, he stayed in the old house for a while, but not long after, he returned to Wuxia Villa. Su Qianxi was leading a few children to recite ancient poems in the living room. The 3 children were a little interested and recited along with her. Nanny Rong watched them from the side with a kind smile. Ding dong. The doorbell rang, and the children looked over. Li Jianhua immediately got up and shouted, "Mommy, I'll go open the door." The smile on Nanny Rong's face deepened. She pushed the little girl back down and said, "I'll go." "You sit down." Li Jianhua immediately sat down again and shouted, "Thank you, Nanny Rong." "You're welcome. Ursu has to learn poetry from Mommy." "Yeah." Nanny Rong looked through the peephole and was surprised to see Oh Ming. She quickly opened the door and shouted, "Madam, Mr. O is here." Oh Ming and Yu Lily walked in hand. When the 2 of them walked in together, the children's eyes lit up when they saw them. Li Jianhua got up and ran toward Oh Ming, shouting, "Uncle O." Oh Ming squatted down with a smile and reached out toward Li Jianhua, intending to catch her. But Li Jianhua stopped when she was about to reach him. She looked at Oh Ming's hand and asked, "Uncle, is your hand not healed yet?" Oh Ming smiled and pinched the little girl's pink cheek. "It's not that fast, but it'll be fine soon." Li Jianhua nodded and blinked her big eyes. "Uncle, you have to get better soon." "Auntie, you're here too." With that, she went up and took Yu Lily's hand. She looked at the ring on Yu Lily's hand and exclaimed, "Auntie's ring is so beautiful." Yu Lily smiled and squatted down. "Thank you, Ursu." Li Jianhua smiled and pulled Yu Lily to the sofa. "Mommy, big brother, come quickly." Su Qianxi looked at the little girl from afar. It was obvious that she was trying to avoid reciting poetry. She shook her head and said, "Go and call your father out." "Oh." The smile on Li Jianhua's face widened. She immediately let go of Yu Lily's hand and strode inside. But when she ran, her pink spring dress fluttered, and she shouted in a sweet, childish voice, "Daddy, Daddy." The little girl's voice faded away. Li Mosen and Li Jianxian also got up and ran to the kitchen. Nanny Rong was making tea for the guests. Seeing the 2 boys running in, she couldn't help but ask, what are you two doing? Li Jianxian came over and said, Granny Rong, give me the tea. I'll bring it over to the guest. Li Mosen said, I'm here to get some snacks for the guests. Nanny Rong poured the tea, but she did not give it to Li Jianxian. Instead, she gave it to Li Mosen and said, Young Master Mosen is the older brother, so he will be more careful. Young Master, you can take the snacks out later. Li Jianxian felt a little regretful, but he also nodded. Okay. Not long after O Ming and Yu Lily sat down, they heard a tender voice coming from inside. It was slowly coming out. Chapter 1267. Hearing the little girl's words, Su Qianxi turned around and looked at the father and daughter coming out. Li Xiqing walked out steadily with his daughter in his arms. When he heard Li Jianyue's words, he smiled and nodded. Then I'll talk to your mother. Whether you can succeed or not, you have to rely on yourself. I heard that. Su Qianxi pretended to look over with a straight face. She looked unhappy and said, My daughter actually said bad things about me. How do you think Mom will punish you? When Li Jianyue heard that, she quickly covered her mouth. She looked at Li Xiqing pitifully and shouted, Daddy, save me. Li Xiqing walked over with his daughter in his arms, pinched her little face, and whispered, I'll help you later. When Li Jianyue saw how secretive her father was, she quickly nodded her head and carefully turned to look at her mother. She covered her little face and went into Li Xiqing's neck. She whispered, Daddy, you must keep your word. Don't be fooled by Mommy's honey trap. The little girl thought that her voice was very low, but at the same time, O Ming and Yu Lily both laughed. Li Jianyue was shocked. She turned her head and found that they were all looking at her. Li Jianyue stuck out her tongue and looked at Su Qianxi timidly. She found that she was also looking at her. Her little heart jumped, and she quickly climbed down from her father's body. She ran over to her and shouted, Mom. Su Qianxi pretended to be unhappy and turned her head away. Li Jianyue quickly climbed over to the other side and held her arm, shouting, Mom. Su Qianxi looked at her this time. Li Jianyue pouted and leaned toward her. She said vaguely, Kiss me, but before she could kiss Su Qianxi's mouth, her line of sight was blocked by a big palm. Her little mouth pecked a rough palm. Li Xiqing picked her up and threw her to the side of the sofa. He said, Go play with your brothers. Li Jianyue was a little unhappy and pouted. Just at this time, Li Mosen came out with a tray. There were 2 delicate and beautiful cups on the tray. Just behind Li Mosen, Li Jianxian also came out with 2 plates of snacks and put them on the coffee table. How sensible. Yu Lily looked at their children enviously and said, They should be 5 years old, right? Yes, Desu and Ursu are 5 years old, and Mosen is 6. They are not children anymore. Su Qianxi looked at them with a smile. Compared to the past, Su Qianxi's face had more motherly radiance, but her face looked more delicate and beautiful. Nanny Rong brought 2 more cups of tea and a few glasses of juice for the children. She said, Mr. O, I heard you were injured. Your eyes? O Ming smiled and said, Well, it was just a few days ago. Nanny Rong, please sit down. I have something to say. Yu Lily put the gift box on the table and looked at O Ming. She already knew what he wanted to say. Sure enough, O Ming took out a red booklet from his pocket. The words, marriage certificate, were written on it, and it was displayed in front of them. Seeing this, Li Xiqing's deep and narrow eyes flashed with a bright smile. You've finally made your move? Your mother agreed. No, I acted first and reported later. O Ming carefully put the marriage certificate in his pocket and said, If I told her in advance, she probably wouldn't agree no matter what. Chapter 1268. Of course not. O Ming denied it without hesitation. I want to talk to my parents after I'm done with the matter at hand. His mother had a strong opinion of Yu Lily, so much so that even O Huajin and Wen Fenglin couldn't resolve it. If this continued, Xiao Ziqing would have to think things through if she wanted to accept Yu Lily. That possibility wasn't impossible, but it was too low. Based on Xiao Ziqing's insistence over the past few days, Ming guessed that the main reason they were stuck between them now was because of Yu Lily's background. If they could find Yu Lily's biological parents, things might change. I think your father will be very angry about such a big matter. Li Xiqing had known Ming since they were young, so he was very familiar with Huijin. The uncle looked kind, but he had a bad temper. If he got angry, he might even hit someone. My father is easy to deal with, but my mother is the key. Ming sighed. Let's just let nature take its course. Su Qianxi saw that the topic had become a little heavy. She looked at Li Jianyue, who seemed to understand, and whispered, "Follow brother to the room to play." Li Jianyue blinked and nodded obediently. Then, she took Li Jianxian's hand and said, "Brother, let's go inside to play." Li Jianxian had never been able to do anything with his sister. After leading Li Mosen and his sister inside, he said, "I'm going to read. You two play." Li Jianxian was happy when she heard that. She waved her hand and said, "Go on, go on. I'll play with Brother Mosen." Li Jianxian didn't care and turned to leave. Li Jianyue closed the door and said excitedly, "Brother Mosen, let's play that game." Li Mosen frowned and said reluctantly, "No, it's just the two of us. I'm always down there. It's tiring. I don't care. If I'm down there, I'll be crushed by brother. Lie down. Hurry up." Li Jianyue urged him and pushed him toward the bed. Li Mosen was like Li Jianxian. He was helpless toward this little girl and didn't know how to comply. After thinking about it, he still lay down. Li Jianyue pushed him so that he was lying on his side and said unhappily, "You should be lying down like this." As he spoke, the little fellow climbed onto Li Mosen's body. His chubby little body was pressed against Li Mosen's. It was very meaty and very comfortable. Li Mosen asked helplessly, "Are you done?" Ursu was a little excited. She straightened her little body and shouted, "I'm done, push me down." Li Mosen leaned to the side and Li Jianyue's small, fleshy body fell to the other side of the bed. The little guy's body fell down and he giggled excitedly. He shouted, "Again, again." Li Mosen leaned over, and Li Jianyue did the same. After a few times, Li Jianyue's interest did not diminish at all. Instead, she became even more excited and shouted, "Brother Mosen, let's do it again." "No, I'm so tired," Li Mosen refused. "You'll crush me to death like this." Li Jianyue pouted her pink little mouth and looked at Li Mosen with a pitiful look. She said, "It's the last time." Li Mosen looked at Ursu's little face and finally softened his heart. He warned, "It's the last time. Okay." Chapter 1269. However, just as Li Jianyue climbed on top of him, the door to the room was opened. The two little guys on the bed were so scared that they shivered. Li Mosen quickly turned his body and Li Jianyue fell down. Then, both of them turned their heads at the same time. Li Jianxian walked in with a book in his hand. When he saw their big reaction, he felt a little strange and asked, "What are you doing?" "Brother." Li Jianyue got up and looked at Li Jianxian. Her face was full of accusation as she said, "Why didn't you knock on the door when you came in?" "That's so rude." Li Jianxian laughed. "This is my room too. I'm entering my own room. Why do I have to knock on the door?" Li Jianyue's pink face suddenly turned red. She said, "If there is someone inside, you should knock on the door. Don't you have to knock on the door when you enter Mom and Dad's room? How can that be compared? Mom and Dad are husband and wife. You are brother and sister." Li Jianyue's heart was stifled. She felt even more uncomfortable when her brother said that. However, she just felt that what her brother said was wrong. It was wrong. However, she couldn't tell what was wrong. It was as if there was something that had to be said, but she didn't know what to say. This feeling was too uncomfortable. The little fellow snorted, turned her head, and shouted, I don't care about Big Brother anymore. Big Brother is always right. Li Jianxian walked in with the book in his arms. He took off his cotton slippers and climbed onto the bed. He said, that's because what I say makes sense. You can't refute it, so you feel that what I say is right. When Li Jianyue heard this, she was even more unhappy. But what were you doing just now? Why did you look like that? We were playing a game of chasing you off the bed. When Li Jianyue heard this, she immediately smiled and shared it. She said, brother doesn't play with me every time, so brother Mosen and I created this game. It's so fun. It's not fun. Li Mosen immediately retorted. It's not fun at all. Li Jianyue put her hands on her hips and puffed out her chest. She shouted, it's fun. Li Jianxian looked at the two of them yelling at each other. He pursed his lips in disdain and said, Mosen, don't play with her if you don't think it's fun in the future. You'll spoil Ursu too much. Girls are meant to be spoiled. If you don't spoil me, it means you don't love me. Humph. Li Jianyue used Li Xiqing's method and said, I'll tell Dad and let him criticize you. Ursu, you are so bad. Li Mosen wrinkled his nose and said, I won't play this with you in the future. When I'm in a good mood, I'll play with you again. Don't do that, Li Jianyue frowned and pouted her pink lips. Brother Mosen is the best, she said in an ingratiating tone. Li Mosen didn't listen to her. He turned his head and said, when I'm in a good mood. Are you in a bad mood now? Li Jianyue blinked her eyes, looking a little aggrieved. Oh no, Ursu is bullying me. I'm not. Brother Mosen is the best. I can't bear to bully Brother Mosen. The little girl raised 3 fingers and made a gesture of 3. I swear. Li Jianxian sweated and reminded her, Ursu, you swore wrongly. Huh? Chapter 1270. But, if the 3 in the middle are too difficult. Li Jianyue pouted and said, although I swore wrongly, my heart is true. I can't bear to bully Brother Mosen. As she said that, she leaned over and said, Brother Mosen, Ella Biyao. Li Jianxian listened, looked up, and corrected, it's I love you. Li Mosen's face turned red, and he was a little embarrassed. Li Jianyue smiled, as if she didn't notice the impact of her words on others. Her little face was full of joy as she said, anyway, that's what I mean. It's good that you understand. Then, she looked at Li Jianxian and said, brother, I love Ella Biyao too. These words shouldn't have been a big deal. But when it fell into Li Mosen's ears, it was a little unpleasant. The same thing, Ursa not only gave it to him, but also to Desu. But Desu was her biological brother, wasn't he? As for him, he was just an adopted child. Li Jianxian didn't notice Li Mosen's strangeness. When he heard this, he laughed and said, Ursu, that's called I love you too. Oh, short Kumbayu Pui. Li Jianxian was powerless. He put down the book in his hand and said, come, read after me. The siblings began to struggle with the pronunciation, while Li Mosen sat on the side, took the famous book that Li Jianxian brought and read it. There was pinyin on it, and it didn't look difficult. The siblings stayed inside for the whole afternoon. When Su Qianxi came in, Li Jianxian was patiently teaching Li Jianyue words. Compared to Li Jianxian's patience, Li Jianyue's small body was crooked, and it was obvious that she lacked interest. She stared at the letters written by her brother in front of her and said, brother, your handwriting is so beautiful. Well, write one for me to see. Li Jianyue picked up the pen, crooked on the surface of the paper, drew a circle, and then drew a little more at the back. Wrong, write it like this. Li Jianxian grabbed her hand, stroke by stroke. Why are you so stupid? I really suspect that mom got the wrong baby when she was giving birth. When Li Jianyue heard this, she was unhappy. She pouted and said, it won't happen. Daddy said that I look like mommy and I are both beautiful and cute. I will definitely look like mommy in the future. I won't. Why? Because you're not twins. Ah. When Li Jianyu heard that, she turned to look at her twin brother. She blinked and said, then, will I look like my brother in the future? Of course not. Li Jianxian turned her head back and said, don't think too much. You are a woman, and I am a man. How can we look the same? But, my brother and I are twins. Did you say that twins will look very similar? Li Jianyu was unwilling to give up. She was unwilling to write. Twins are different from each other. Some look alike, while others don't. Oh. Li Jianyu didn't seem to understand. Then why don't we look alike? This question directly made Li Jianxian stumped. Xiao Xiao frowned and thought about it. After a long time, she said, because we don't look alike. But why? Because so. Chapter 1271. Li Jianxian couldn't answer. He blushed and looked a little impatient as he shouted. Hey, are you going to write or not? Li Jianrui pouted and said, I don't want to write. It's not fun at all. But the little princess must know how to write. A little princess who can't write will be laughed at, Li Mosen interrupted. Li Jianrui pouted even higher and said, why is there such an invention as words in the world? It's so annoying. Su Qianxi laughed and said, well, I won't write anymore. Let's go eat with uncle and auntie. Hearing that, Li Jianrui immediately stood up, threw away the pen in her hand, and shouted, Mom, I want to go. Let's go together. Quickly put on your shoes. Su Qianxi patted her little butt and pushed her. Li Jianrui immediately smiled and put on her slippers. She ran to the shoe cabinet outside and took out her black bright leather princess shoes. Sitting on a small stool next to the shoe cabinet, the little girl tore the glued shoelaces and stuffed them on her feet. Li Jianxian and Li Mosen followed behind. The three little guys looked about the same size, but their appearances, temperaments, and personalities were all different. Yu Lili and O Ming sat on the sofa and looked at their children with a smile. Li Jianxian was wearing a pair of small air shoes. He untied the shoelaces and tied them neatly before standing up. Oh! Brother! Li Jianrui suddenly shouted. It sounded like she was about to cry. She shouted, the shoes went in, and I can't take them out. Li Jianxian turned his head and asked, where did they go? Look! The shoes were stepped on by the little girl's heel. Li Jianxian looked helpless and said in disgust, stupid. Li Jianrui didn't dare to speak and looked at her brother with a pair of big round eyes. Li Jianxian squatted down and took off her little shoes helplessly. He said, you have to do this, like this, Li Jianrui responded, but she didn't listen very carefully. Instead, she looked in the direction of Li Mosen. The little fellows put on their shoes and stood up together, shouting, Daddy, Mommy, we are ready. Looking at the interaction of the children and the lively atmosphere, O Ming quietly lowered his head and whispered into Yu Lili's ear, it seems that it is good to have more children. You want 3, too? Yu Lili stretched out her finger and pushed his face away. Do you think I'm a sow? Sows aren't bad either. 3 at a time. O Ming touched her finger and chuckled. At that time, we can let the children play with their children. Second brother's children were very smart. All 3 of them were very clever. O Ming knew what was going on and whispered, that girl must have been spoiled by Lao air. As if to confirm his words, Li Xiqing walked up, picked up his daughter, and asked, are you hungry? Ursa shook her head, I'm not hungry. Li Xiqing seemed very happy. He pinched her little face and said, let's go. Daddy will take you to eat. Yu Lili also laughed and said, every time I come over, I see him coaxing or holding his daughter, and the 2 men ignore him. Will such favoritism leave a psychological shadow on the children? Chapter 1272. Go find a sow to give birth to. Yu Lili pushed him, but she couldn't suppress the smile on her face. Oh, Ming didn't mind. He pulled her along and followed the family of 3. They followed quietly and quickly went out. Su Qianxi had a big car, and they were all neighbors. After getting in the car together, they drove to the hot pot restaurant. The children were very lively, especially Li Jianyue. She sang and jumped along the way and chatted with Yu Lily. At this moment, she sat on Yu Lily's lap and asked in a childish voice, "Auntie, can I learn painting from you in the future? I also like painting, but my brother always says that my painting is so ugly. I am so angry." Yu Lily smiled and said, "Of course, I am your neighbor now. If you want to play with me, you can come over at any time." "Really? Where do you live, Auntie? After dinner, I will take you to have a look." "Uh-huh." Li Jianyue looked very happy and said, "Then hurry up, Auntie." The car sped up, and soon they arrived at the place to eat. The children were playing together, and several adults were sitting at the coffee table and talking. Li Jianyue held the big pillow and the box in her hand and ran toward Li Mosen, shouting, "Brother Mosen, my button is off. Help me button it." Li Mosen was sitting in a chair playing a game, and Li Jianxian was playing with his phone. When he heard Li Jianyue's voice, he shouted, "No, Ursu, don't come over. We are playing a game. If we lose, it will be your fault." When Li Jianyue heard this, she was a little unhappy. She pouted and said, "What's so fun about playing a game? It's not fun at all." Li Jianxian ignored Li Jianyue and concentrated on playing the game. But Li Mosen quickly put down the phone in his hand, waved to Li Jianyue, and said, "Come here." Li Jianyue held the big pillow and immediately smiled. She jumped over with her short legs and shouted, "Brother Mosen is the best." Li Jianxian shouted and said, "No, Mosen, you are actually hanging up." Li Mosen ignored Li Jianxian's howl and focused on buttoning Li Jianyue's back. Then, the sound of Li Mosen's game character being killed came out, followed by Li Jianxian being killed. By the time Li Mosen had finished buttoning Li Jianyue's shirt, the news of everyone's death came. Then, they failed. "Li Mosen, you traitor, you actually hung up and lost." Li Jianxian threw the phone away and shouted angrily. Li Jianyue blinked her eyes. She hugged the big pillow and looked at her brother. She said, "It's okay to lose. Just win it back. Why are you so angry? Right, Brother Mosen?" Hearing that, Li Mosen nodded and said, "Yes, it's good to win it back." When Li Jianxian heard them echoing each other, he was so angry that he didn't want to pay attention to them. He turned around and picked up his phone to continue playing. Soon, the hot pot was ready. Su Qianxi rushed the children to the bathroom to wash their hands and sat down, but it was obvious that Li Jianxian was unhappy. His little face was stiff, and he sat in the chair without saying a word. That unhappy look was exactly the same as Li Xicheng. Dash. Chapter 1273. When Su Qianxi saw this, she leaned over and asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Li Jianxian picked up a piece of cold dish and put it into his mouth, but the force was a little forceful, and he looked very angry. When Li Xicheng saw this, he raised his eyebrows slightly and asked, "Desu, are you unhappy?" "No." Li Jianxian still said the same thing. He reached out his chopsticks and picked up another piece of food to eat. "Why are you unhappy?" Li Jianxian replied, "I'm not unhappy." "Did Ursa make you angry again?" Li Xicheng asked as he heated the beef for his wife. Li Jianyue was suddenly called. She looked up, blinked, and said, "Dad, I didn't. It was brother who lost the game with Brother Mosen." "Oh." Li Xicheng looked at Li Jianxian. "Is that so?" Li Jianxian was silent for a moment before he said sullenly, "Mosen is always like this. He stops playing when Ursa calls him. He always causes me to lose." "I'm sorry, Desu." Li Mosen sat next to Li Jianxian and said, "Ursa didn't button her shirt properly just now, so I did it for her." But you let go at the critical moment. It's so hateful. Li Jianxian gritted his teeth, but immediately continued to eat and did not speak. Everyone finally understood what was going on. Li Jianhua pouted and apologized. Brother, don't be angry. It's Ursu's fault. I won't call you guys when you're playing games in the future. When Li Xiqing heard this, he frowned and said, a man should be magnanimous. It's natural to protect your sister. It's natural to help her. Why are you angry? When Su Qianxi heard this, she reached out and pulled on Li Xiqing's sleeve and said, don't teach the children. Li Xiqing held Su Qianxi's hand and said, the children are still young. There are some things that they should know. For a man, the most important thing should be his family. Whether it is his mother or his sister, they should be protected. And you boys, no matter your age, should be strong and self-respecting. You shouldn't vent your anger on your family, and you shouldn't be angry with your sister. Do you understand? Yu Lily felt strange when she heard that. She glanced at O Ming and whispered, your second brother is too biased. O Ming smiled faintly. He turned his head and whispered, a little, but that's how boys should be taught. Yu Lily, birds of a feather flock together. When Li Jianxian, who was being lectured, heard his father's words, his bright red lips pursed even tighter. Sullenly, he said, I didn't vent. Indeed, he did not vent. If Su Qianxi and Li Xiqing had not asked, he probably would not have said anything. Su Qianxi felt a bit distressed. She patted Li Xiqing and said, shut up. You're so annoying. As she spoke, she sat down beside Li Jianxian and said, don't listen to your father. If you are unhappy in the future, just say it and tell mom. When Li Xiqing saw his wife's protective attitude, he didn't say anything else. She boiled a few more pieces of beef and put them in the bowl in front of Li Jianxian. She said, you are still young, so I'll let it go this time. In the future, you have to learn to control your emotions. You have to be clear about what is important and what is not. If any small thing can affect your emotions, then you are a failure as a person. Chapter 1274. 5 years old, not young anymore. When I was 5, I was already in primary school. It is not good for these children to stay at home. Let Xingyu arrange for them to go to school, Li Xiqing said, looking at them. Su Qianxi was a little reluctant and said, it's good for them to study at home, there's a limit to what my family can give me. I need to get in touch with other friends. After a pause, he continued, if you don't go out and see, how will you know how good you are? Su Qianxi was overjoyed by his words. Su Qianxi curled her lips, thought about it, and asked Li Jianxian, after a few days, I will send you to school, okay? Whatever. Li Jianxian's expression had eased a lot, but when he said this, his eyes could not help but drift to Li Xiqing. His dark eyes were filled with unspeakable respect. Seeing this, O Ming knew that the child had listened to what his second brother had just said. So smart. Like father, like son, just like Li Xiqing. If I go to school, will there be a lot of people? Li Jianhua seemed a little excited. Can I be in the same class as Brother Mosen? Sure. Li Xiqing curled his lips and glanced at his excited daughter. If you pass the exam. Li Jianhua was even happier and cheered, I will definitely get in. When you go back, you have to study hard, Li Jianxian, Li Xiqing called out. Li Jianxian straightened his back and looked at Li Xiqing. Dad. Go back and help your sister with her revision, Li Mosen. Li Mosen also looked over. He was a little happy and shouted, here. You're 6 years old. I'll hire a tutor for you, so you can go straight to elementary school. Okay, Dad. Li Mosen was overjoyed. What about Daesu and Ursu? Will you be in the same class with me? Daesu will be in the same class as you. As for Ursu, Li Jianhua was a little unconvinced and shouted, I can get in. Dad, don't look down on me. Li Xiqing chuckled, pinched her little face with his big hand, and said, hurry up and eat. The whole family sat together, happy and harmonious. After they finished eating, Yu Lily took them to tour the new house that she and Oh Ming were living in. It was also Yu Lily's first time living in this house. Just when she thought she had explored all the places, she shouted, "Auntie, there's a door up there." "What's it for?" "The door above?" When Yu Lily heard that, she looked up. It was a small place on the side of the stairs. If one did not look carefully, one would not notice that there was a small door here. The small door was only big enough for an adult to enter. It was very small. Oh Ming stepped forward and said, "That's a holographic room. Your Auntie Lily has never been in it before. Let's go. Uncle will take you in." Li Jianhua didn't understand what holographic meant, but when she heard that they were going in, she immediately nodded. Oh Ming turned around and took out a remote control from somewhere. He pressed the button, and the small door quickly opened. It was pitch black inside. Oh Ming pressed the remote control again, and a large area of light immediately lit up inside. Blue, murmuring water. "Come, let's go in and take a look." Chapter 1275. Yu Lily had never been here before, so naturally, she did not know what it was like inside. As soon as she came in, she was shocked by the scene in front of her. The surroundings were navy blue, and there was water everywhere. Large and small sea fish were swimming around, looking lazy and leisurely. There was also cool air around him, as if there was really water coming from all directions. Gurgle, gurgle. The sound of water came from all directions, and she felt a sense of crisis. The little girl stood on the flat and hard ground, but this inexplicable feeling of being suspended in the air was a little frightening. Li Jianrui subconsciously grabbed Li Xiqing's big hand and leaned over with some fear. However, a pair of big eyes still stared curiously at the bottom. The fish coming and going, and the constantly gurgling water, all made Li Jianrui feel very excited and fun. At the bottom, there were beautiful corals and seaweed that swayed endlessly. The waves swayed layer by layer, looking beautiful. Beautiful tropical fish, colorful, gently swayed their tails, and their mouths blew bubbles. And Li Jianxian and Li Mosen, looking at the deep-sea fish coming and going, seemed to appear in front of them. They reached out and wanted to touch them, but quickly passed through their bodies. Su Qianxi also felt a little emotional, feeling that it was a little fun. Oh Ming saw the appearance of a few children, and then looked at his own woman. At this moment, Yu Lily was staring at a shell below. The shell swam and opened and closed, looking a little funny. Yu Lily looked at it with a smile and shouted, "Look at this." Li Jianrui giggled, took Li Xiqing's hand, and shouted, "Dad, can I come often to play in the future?" "You have to ask your uncle Oh Ming." When Li Jianrui heard that, she turned to look at Oh Ming, blinked her big eyes, and asked, "Uncle Oh Ming, can I?" "Of course, you are welcome at any time." Oh Ming rubbed Li Jianrui's little head. "You can ask your brothers to bring you over." "Okay." Li Jianrui was very happy. "Thank you, uncle." "Well, let's go back," Li Xiqing pulled Su Qianxi and said, "They just got married today." Hearing this, Su Qianxi understood. Her cheeks were slightly red, and her elbow gently moved Li Xiqing. Then, he brought the children with him and walked out. The children were a little reluctant to leave, especially Li Jianhua. She had a pair of big eyes and looked around. She seemed to be very interested. However, no matter how reluctant he was still pulled away by Su Qianxi. "Leaving so soon?" "Stay a little longer," Yu Lily said. "No, it's time for the kids to go home and take a shower. See you." She waved her hand. When Yu Lily heard that, she nodded her head and said, "All right, I'll see you off." "No, you guys stay here. It's only a few minutes' walk." "It's not far." Su Qianxi pushed her back and patted her hand. "Happy wedding." His words made Yu Lily's heart feel as if it was boiling water, and it felt warm. "Thank you, Qianqian." She chuckled and waved her hand. Let's go. After sending off the family, Yu Lily closed the door. When she turned around, she saw Oh Ming walking toward her with something in his hand. Chapter 1276. Happiness, from the deepest part of her heart, involuntarily climbed to her limbs and seeped into every meridian. Yu Lily smiled, gently licked her slightly dry lower lip, and walked toward Oh Ming. Oh Ming stood in place, waiting for her to come over. He opened his hands and said, "Do you remember? When did we meet?" 7. 8 years ago? What about the date? Yu Lily thought about it, shook her head, and asked, "Do you remember?" Oh Ming thought about it and said, "I don't know. I thought you would remember." When Yu Lily heard that, she turned her head and glared at him. "You don't even remember, and you're asking me? Anyway, it's not today. Here, let's go." "Where are we going?" "The holographic room." Oh Ming took Yu Lily's hand and walked slowly. He picked up the remote control in his hand and quickly pressed it twice. "Let's go play on the mountain." "Where did the mountain come from? How can we change the scenery?" Yu Lily was a little surprised. Seeing his smiling expression, her heart melted in an instant. "Of course there is. Otherwise, we'll play in the sea forever. Why didn't you show it to the children just now? They loved it." "Of course, I had to let my wife experience it first. I originally wanted to give you a surprise at night, but who knew that second brother's daughter's eyes were so sharp? She saw it so quickly." Oh Ming opened the door and pulled her in. As soon as they entered the door, they saw a very bright light. They were surrounded by the scenery of the mountains during the day, and even the air was very fresh. Yu Lily was very surprised. She stepped in and stepped on a stone. Oh Ming was behind, watching her back, and pressed the remote control with a bad idea. The stone under her feet suddenly shook, and Yu Lily lost her balance and almost fell down. With a yelp, Yu Lily instinctively reached out to grab Oh Ming. Oh Ming reached out to support her and pulled her firmly into his arms. Looking at the fair and delicate face in front of him, his lips curled up, and his bright peach eyes were full of a smile. He whispered in her ear, "Is it fun?" Yu Lily was shocked. She didn't expect it to have such a function. Annoyed, he reached out to pat Oh Ming and said, "Why didn't you say anything? You scared me to death." "How could I scare you if I told you?" Oh Ming smiled. "Look, there's someone playing over there." Yu Lily looked in the direction of his finger and saw a couple hugging and kissing not far away. The man's back looked somewhat familiar. He was tall and sturdy, nearly 1.9 meters tall. He was wearing loose, burgundy sportswear, which was his usual style. In front of the man, a petite and slender woman was pressed against a rock. Her hands were gently placed on his waist, and her face was raised to receive the man's kiss. When Yu Lily saw that, she felt a little surprised. At the same time, she felt a strong sense of shame. This woman's face was exactly the same as hers. And that man. Wasn't that Oh Ming? What's going on? When did I ever shoot such a film? Yu Lily was embarrassed and annoyed. Pervert. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.